Okay, nobody's in the waiting room. All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Marta Sotakova, and I am the current president of the Slovak American Society of Washington, D.C. On behalf of the Slovak American Society of Washington, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our next speaker series. The SASW is a cultural organization dedicated to preserving and promoting Slovak heritage in the United States. Through social events, educational programs, and community gatherings, we connect people of Slovak descent and foster a deeper appreciation for Slovakia's rich traditions, history, and culture. If you are joining us for the first time, or if you're not yet a member, please consider becoming one. Your support helps us continue to bring you events like this and many others that would not be possible with our community. Today's program, Obtaining a Slovak Living Abroad SLA Certificate and Slovak Citizenship by Descent by Greg Tears. Greg Tears is a U.S. Slovak citizen, is a dual U.S. Slovak citizen, and currently serves as an SAS board member and a member of SASW's SLA committee. Professionally, Greg is an attorney at Amazon Web Services in Arlington, Virginia, where he advises on applied AI solutions for healthcare and life sciences customers. He also serves as the Secretary General in Directorate of International Recruiting for the Slovak Lacrosse Federation, Slovenská lacroseová federácia, and is an assistant coach for the Slovak men's national lacrosse team. Greg received his AB in English and American Literature and Language from Harvard University and his JD from Rutgers Law School, where he serves as an editor of the Rutgers Law Review. At the end of the presentation, we'll open the floor for a Q&A session. In the meantime, feel free to submit your questions in the chat. We'll address them if we have time. No need to take photos or copy links from the slides. The full presentation will be shared with all registered attendees. Please join me in welcoming Greg Tears. Thank you. All right, Greg, floor's all yours.
Excuse me, Greg.
Thanks, Mark.
Greg, before you start, can you collapse down that column of viewers?
You sure can.
Thank you. Because we can all, yeah, great.
You got it.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone, for joining today. I'm really excited. We got a tremendous turnout here for this presentation, as I know that everyone here is excited about this new roadmap here to potentially getting Slovak citizenship. Just want to give you a little bit of my background and my journey in the Slovak living abroad and Slovak citizenship by descent process. I applied for my Slovak living abroad certificate right after the law was passed in 2022. Shortly thereafter, I received my SLA in 2024. I then went and applied for my citizenship by descent based on my SLA certificate and received my citizenship last year, early last year. Got my passport about 4 or 5 months after that. And so it's been about a year now since I've had all of my documents in place. So what we thought as a member, given that SASW has a large membership, we thought it made sense to do a presentation on what are the steps, what does it take to obtain a Slovak living abroad certificate, and Slovak CBD is what I'll call it for short during this presentation. So before I get started, I just wanted to read a quick disclaimer. As an attorney, I'm required to read these types of things. So I just want to let you guys know that the information presented today is provided for general informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Although I am a licensed attorney, no attorney-client relationship is created or implied by attending this presentation, receiving these materials, or engaging in any discussion during or after this session. The laws, regulations, and administrative procedures governing the Slovak living abroad certificate and Slovak citizenship by descent are subject to change and may be interpreted differently by Slovak government authorities on a case-by-case basis. The information shared today reflects my understanding as of the date of this presentation. It may not reflect the most current legal developments. This presentation is not a substitute for individualized legal counsel. Every applicant's circumstances are unique, and outcomes may vary based on individual facts, documentation, and the discretion of the relevant Slovak authorities, including the Office for Slovaks Living Abroad and the Ministry of Interior of the Slovak Republic. If you're considering applying for a Slovak Living Abroad certificate or Slovak citizenship by descent, I strongly encourage you to consult with a qualified legal professional who's familiar with Slovak nationality law and administrative procedures before taking any action. I'm expressly disclaiming any liability for actions taken or not taken based on the content of this presentation. It's intended strictly for personal use. Reproduction, redistribution, resale, or commercial use of any kind is strictly prohibited without our prior written consent. So I want to go over what we're going to cover today and what we're not going to cover today.
Can we ask
Sure.
everyone to mute their computers? Because if I mute, I'm going to mute you too. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Marta. So I'll go over what we will cover today and then what we won't cover today. So what will we cover today? So today I want to provide a general overview of the SLA process, including basic documentation, logistics, a general overview of the CBD process, also basic documentation and logistics, some upcoming potential changes to the law. Some of you may know about in July 2026, the Parliament is going to be taking up some changes to the citizenship laws, which may make things, my view, slightly easier and slightly more difficult at the same time. And we'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation. I'm going to provide some example documents from my applications that proved my Slovak descent. I'm going to provide some frequently asked questions that's some that I hear all the time. And then at the very end, I'm going to provide, I have a few slides with resources to assist your SLA CBD journey. The goal of this, from my perspective, is to leave everyone on this call with a takeaway. And the takeaway here is you're going to get a copy of this presentation. In the presentation, all the links are active. So when you click on a link, it'll take you to exactly where that is. You know, if it's a National Archives or if it's an apostille explanation, it'll take you to a specific page. Because the goal here is to make this as easy as possible. And I know that this can be overwhelming for many as you get started in this process. Where to find documents? There's so many old places to look in different language, and it's really sometimes overwhelming. And so I want to try and get this down to as simple as possible. Leave you with some checklists, some documents that you'll definitely need, and introduce you to this process to make it simple, so that you're not overwhelmed. What we won't cover today. So unfortunately, I mean, we have so many people on this call. It was an overwhelming amount of interest. I don't think this is the proper forum really to provide specific advice on your particular case. There really are better forums for those types of discussions. And I would highly recommend, and I'll bring this up later, but our genealogy group, which meets on the fourth Tuesday of every month, I believe it's a Tuesday. I have it written down here. Is a fantastic resource led by our former president, Georgine Chastain, who's also a Slovak genealogist. That's where you can bring your problem cases, roadblocks, anything, and discuss that. There's also some tremendous Facebook and Reddit groups out there that talk on a daily basis all the time about questions, specific little details that we can get in that are worth it to discuss in those forums. But unfortunately here, given the large turnout, it's really not the best place for those types of questions. So let's give a quick historical context. So everyone knows Czechoslovakia was created in 1918, right? The independence from Austria-Hungary. So we fast forward 1993. That's when the Slovak Republic was established, Velvet Divorce. In 2010, Slovakia adopted a pretty strict dual citizenship law. So Slovak citizens who voluntarily acquired another nationality automatically lost their Slovak citizenship. So this became a problem for a lot of Slovaks living abroad in particularly. The SLA was originally created to reconnect Slovakia with its dispersed kin, not in North America, but much closer to home. In the early 2000s, as a means to recognize ethnic Slovaks living in the former Yugoslavia, Hungary, and Romania, Slovakia decided to develop this SLA certificate. And the SLA certificate, for those that aren't aware, offers something very substantial. It offers the ability to live, work, study, and even establish a business in Slovakia. The way I think of an SLA certificate is it's sort of a form of semi-citizenship. You can do everything that a citizen of Slovakia can do except you can't work and live among the greater EU states. So you can't live in the other 26 EU member states. You're confined essentially to Slovakia. So if your goal is only to live in Slovakia, if your goal is to get there as quickly as possible, and you have the Slovak heritage and can prove it, the SLA certificate is probably the ideal route for you. Especially if, and we'll get into this a little later, if you're beyond the citizenship by descent requirements. So for instance, if your great-great-great-grandfather or great-grandmother was great-great-great-grandmother was from Slovakia, and you don't qualify for the citizenship by descent provisions, the SLA certificate offers you another opportunity and another avenue to potentially get citizenship down the line. After 3 years of continuous residence, SLA holders may apply for an expedited path to citizenship. So that's a huge advantage for the SLA certificate for folks who don't fall within the CBD provisions specifically. So in 2022, the Citizenship Act was amended, and this opened a whole new pathway for descendants of Czechoslovak citizens to claim Slovak citizenship. It waived the standard 8-year continuous residency requirement for qualifying descendants. It waived the Slovak language exam requirement, which was a huge roadblock for a lot of folks. It relaxed dual citizenship restrictions, which meant that descendants reclaiming citizenship do not lose their U.S. citizenship. So it allowed for a dual U.S. Slovak citizen now. It also extended eligibility to children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Czechoslovak citizens born in the territory of the present-day Slovak Republic. After 18 months of debate, they passed the law, and this was really designed to reconnect the diaspora with Slovakia. Personally, for me, when this law was changed, I lost my Slovak mother in 2014, and we've always identified as Slovak. And so when this opportunity came up, for me, it was an opportunity to preserve my heritage and to claim it back, as my descendants were from the very eastern part of Slovakia, and I'll show you those documents later. And so you'll see, for me, this was a very important thing. It allows me to, I feel very privileged to be able to represent Slovakia with the lacrosse program, and in European and World Championships, representing the flag is a very important thing for me. And it's really given me an opportunity and really made me feel like I'm part of the country. And it's really something that's been very special. And I've been really welcomed with open arms by the folks in Slovakia. So for me, it's been a really wonderful experience so far. So who exactly is eligible for an SLA certificate? Okay. So individuals whose direct ancestors were of Slovak ethnicity and retain Slovak national cultural awareness. And we'll get into that second point in a minute. One of the essential requirements is to show the direct line of descent between the applicant and a Slovak ancestor using vital records. So birth, baptismal certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates. The key for the SLA certificate is that there's no generational limit. This is really a gating item for a lot of folks on the CBD side of the applications. So if you don't have a generational limit, this allows anyone with Slovak heritage, even a remote ancestor, to claim this status. It may be harder to document if it's so far back, but you can do it. And then if you qualify as a Slovak living abroad and have children, they're also eligible as your direct descendants. So what documents would you need to submit for an SLA application? Well, first, there's the application form, and there's a link here to that form. That can be downloaded, or the applicant can pick it up at the Office for Slovaks Living Abroad, or that in Bratislava, or at the Embassy of the Slovak Republic here in Washington, D.C., or at the consulate in New York. The application and the supporting documentation must be submitted in person at the SLA office in Bratislava or at a Slovak embassy in your country of residence. It's a very important requirement. Unfortunately, there's not a way to do anything by mail. So you have to show up in person and you have to sign the documents in front of them. So just a little administrative glitch, but it's something that's an important step and something that you can't really overlook. It does have to be done in person. You have to also provide 2 color photos of recent appearance, 3.5 centimeters by 4.5 centimeters. There are lots of different places online to get those types of photos. Proof of Slovak nationality. This is where you provide your ancestry links, birth certificates, all the way up to the applicant's direct ancestors with proven Slovak ethnicity. You would also include your valid passport. So if you're a US citizen, your US passport. And you also have to prove your national awareness. So this is understood as an active expression of the applicant's commitment to the Slovak nation and to the values that represent the Slovak language, cultural heritage, and traditions. Now, this can be demonstrated by the applicant's declaration of the results of his or her public activities, which demonstrate his or her national awareness. So, for instance, if you've given a lot of speeches on Slovak topics or something like that, or if you're a historian, something to that effect, or you can provide written testimony from an expatriate organization operating in the applicant's place of residence. If such an organization or association does not operate in your applicant's place of residence, then by written testimony from at least 2 Slovaks living abroad who hold a Slovak living abroad certificate or a certificate of a Slovak abroad on facts relating to the applicant's national awareness who reside in the same state as the applicant. And this document proving the national awareness must not be older than 6 months. This is a place where SASW can help our applicants and our members because the SLA committee offers letters in support of SLA applications, and I'll get into those details in a later slide exactly what we provide. But for members, this is a tremendous opportunity to allow SASW to help you support your application with some written testimony, and there are some requirements that we have for that. I'll get into that a little bit later. National awareness can also be demonstrated by mastery of the Slovak language. So in such a case, it's not necessary to get an expatriate organization letter. You can simply provide a language certificate. In my own application, not only did I have an expatriate letter, I also provided up to the A2 level of the Slovak language, which I took on eSlovak, at Comenius University in Bratislava. So that's a good way to get basic Slovak language. It's based on the Krizom Krazom books that many people use to learn the language. So it's a good place to start if that's a route that folks are looking for.
Hey,
You're also required.
Greg, can I ask you a favor?
Yes, sure.
I had a couple of questions. Is it possible for you to present the full screen, the full slide?
Sure.
I think one lady was telling me if you hit from current slide, that might open, because I'm not sure, some of them might not see.
Let me sit here.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Let me just see if I can.
We'll be sending it to everybody, but I think they want, from current slide, I don't know.
See if I can just expand this. That a little bit better?
Yeah, we'll be sending this to everybody, so
Yeah, okay.
it should be. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, if your descendant has a Slovak living abroad certificate, you should include that in the application. Then one of the big things that comes up is your FBI background check. This is something that becomes a difficult step in the process because of timing sometimes. So the requirement is that you're supposed to have a criminal background check in each country of which you are a citizen, and in which you have residence. And it must be not older than 3 months. It must be verified by apostille and translated by an official translator. So the timing of that could be interesting because it takes sometimes several months to get an apostille on this background check. I have a tip later on how to potentially expedite this for folks, but this is something you have to think about in terms of timing of the application. And I think that's one of the biggest glitches in the whole process is everything is done according to a pretty rigorous timeline. And if you don't fall within those timelines, your application can be rejected. And I've seen that happen on several occasions. And people have to redo this background check once or twice. And it just delays things. And so planning is one of the most important things here in terms of trying to make sure that everything aligns with the date of your appointment at the embassy. The next thing is you have to pay a fee of approximately 15 euros. I think technically it's about 14 euros right now. It's a sliding number based on the exchange rate, but it's about 15 euros or so, just to give you a ballpark figure. They only take credit cards. So if you're looking to pay cash or euros, they only take credit cards. All the documents must be either originals or certified true copies. In addition, official documents issued in any jurisdiction other than the Slovak Republic, so any foreign documents, so if any birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, National Archives records, census, I don't know, how would you say plural, censi? I don't know what that would be. Must be apostilled, which is a requirement for any international document that's used by a foreign government pursuant to the Hague Convention. So if it's a state document issued at the state level, it's apostilled at the state level. If it's a federal document, it is apostilled at the federal level. And I'll provide links later to help folks get to where they need to go on the apostille there. All foreign documents also must be officially translated into Slovak by a sworn translator registered by the Ministry of Justice of the Slovak Republic or an officially registered foreign translator. Also, sometimes a glitch because there's only two registered and accepted translators that are on the list by the Ministry of Justice here in the United States. So that those folks sometimes back up. But if you're willing to potentially go to Slovakia or send your documents abroad, you can maybe have it done over there, but then you are sending your documents overseas and then there's the charge to get it, the overseas FedEx charge can be somewhat expensive if you have to go there. Okay, so what can SASW do in terms of support for your SLA application? So SASW can provide a letter of support as a recognized Slovak expatriate organization to help demonstrate national awareness, which is one of the required elements of an SLA application. So what are our requirements at SASW to obtain a support letter for your SLA application? So applicants should be a member of SASW for at least 1 year. And that's timed and then counted from 1 year from the date of joining, and should be a member in good standing at the time of the SLA application. Applicants must be a, quote, active member in the organization and must perform a service project that supports SASW's mission of promoting Slovak culture. Service projects will be worked out in consultation with the committee. And examples of some service projects could be, but are not limited to, serving on the board or on a special committee, newsletter contributions.
Just give me the whole thing, Tony. Just give me the whole thing.
A speaker presentation, video productions, etc. Typically, what happens is you reach out to the SLA committee, and I'll provide that contact information on a later slide. We set up a call, we discuss the application, talk about projects that you'd like to work on, and generally talk about your ties to Slovakia in general, and we go from there. And then after the project's done, then we provide the letter of support that you can include in your application, and it's signed by our president, Marta. Okay. To begin that letter process, you would email info@dcslovaks.org. You can check out our website at dcslovaks.org as well. That is going to be undergoing some construction in the upcoming months, so just bear with us on that. But email is always a good way to reach out to us.
Mm-hmm.
And the SLA committee will guide you through the letter process. So that letter, just as a reminder, must be dated within 6 months of your SLA application. So again, timing of your application is critical. So what's the timing for once you submit your application? Like, when do I get it back? How long does it take? That kind of stuff. So once an SLA application is submitted to the embassy, it's transferred to the SLA office in Slovakia for review. Now, this process, I just want to warn people, it can take up to a month just to have it transferred over. So if you submit it if you walk in on a Monday in the embassy, it's not in Bratislava on Tuesday. It may take up to a month potentially to get over there. And so the clock doesn't start running until the SLA office in Bratislava has it. So once they receive it, they have 60 days under the law to decide whether or not to grant you your SLA. Now, I've seen this be a moving target, to say to be nice about it. It's taken my own personal SLA certificate took over 4 months to get. I was told there were just tremendous delays and backups in the office at the time. So even though they say 60 days, they're not, they can't commit to that necessarily. So just a word of warning about that. So after 60 days, if you don't hear anything, don't worry about it. It may just be that they're backed up. What the benefit, though, of an SLA certificate is once it's approved, the office will issue it to you, and it's good for an unlimited period of time. It's actually a funny thing. When I got mine, I was looking for it, and I thought it was incorrectly shipped out to me. I didn't know why there wasn't a date on it. Why is there no expiration date? Like every other ID that you have, but no, this one doesn't. It's good in essentially for perpetuity. So it's a very powerful document once you have it in your hand. Okay, so if you decide that SLA is your route, that's one way. But if you are really eager to get Slovak citizenship, we can go down the Slovak citizenship by descent path as well. And so the law for Slovak citizenship really changed on April 1st, 2022. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but this was a landmark moment in Slovak history, in my view. I mean, the amount of people who are now eligible for citizenship by descent, some estimates have it at up to 800,000 American citizens who have Slovak heritage and could potentially be eligible for this. I don't know if that number is accurate. That's a number that Slovakia throws around. So I don't know if that's true or not, but it seems based on the diaspora, it seems like that's about pretty accurate. So, under the law, who qualifies? Well, again, at least one parent, grandparent, or great grandparent was a Czechoslovak citizen, and that ancestor was born on the territory of the present day Slovakia, and you were not previously a citizen of the Slovak Republic. The key clarifications to this law. So, the qualifying ancestor must have held Czechoslovak citizenship at some point in their life. So between the years 1918 to 1993, when Czechoslovakia existed. You need to have birth in the territory that was Slovak Republic land at the time of your birth, even if the borders later changed. Ancestors who emigrated before 1918 under Austria-Hungary may qualify if they acquired Czechoslovak citizenship after 1918. And this is evaluated on a case-by-case basis. And this is, I think, the bucket that a lot of folks fall in. Most people that I've talked to who are looking at who are looking at CBD, their relatives emigrated to the United States prior to 1918. Under the law, the way it's written, that's an exclusionary fact. That's just the reality of it. However, I've seen particular a few cases where the law has been interpreted to allow for the granting of citizenship for folks who emigrated prior to 1918. I'm not sure the specific facts as to why that's the case, but it has been granted to some folks in that situation. I'm not sure if those folks then came back to the Czechoslovak territories after 1918 and became a citizen and then came back. That may be the case. I'm not sure. But there are ways around this, and the SLA does help skin this cat, believe it or not. If you become if you have your SLA, you can then use that to help you get citizenship on an expedited basis. It does require residency in Slovakia, but that is a workaround for folks who don't fall directly under this law. So no residency in Slovakia is required, so you can apply and live in the United States. There's no more Slovak language requirement, and there's no minimum period of physical presence in Slovakia, meaning once you have citizenship, you don't have to show up in Slovakia at all. So that those are all positive factors. You also must not have any criminal convictions or pose a security risk. And you must be granted Slovak residency or apply for alongside citizenship application. Now that's going to, when I get into the changes in the law, you'll see how that requirement for the residency drops off. Okay, next page. So what do we need for our application exactly? So again, there's the residence permit section of it and the citizenship application. The residence permit, now again, given the changes in the law that will go in effect in July, these are going to be good for just a few more months, the residence permit portion of this application. So you would need to provide a completed residence permit application, your passport, and a proof of accommodation in Slovakia. Now, when I heard of that one the first time, I was like, proof of accommodation in Slovakia. I don't live in Slovakia. I don't own property in Slovakia. I've only been there a couple of times. Like, I only know a few people. I don't have any more relatives that I know of there. What do I do? And the answer was, you just put down Bratislava. So I think on my application, I put Stare Mesto Bratislava, so Old Town Bratislava. That was my proof of accommodation, and it worked. And I was advised that that would be okay, and it seemed to be fine. And I've advised other people to use that, and it's worked for other applications as well. Citizenship application then. So there's an application to fill out. There's also a questionnaire. Both links are here. You also have to provide a detailed and structured CV. Now this is typically like a resume, but it's a more holistic resume is how I would put it. It's not just your work life, but it's whatever you do socially. It's whatever clubs, whatever organizations or associations you belong to outside, whatever hobbies you have, things like that. So they and your ties to Slovakia, I would include on that CV as well. If there's anything related to Slovakia, I would include that. You also have to include your valid passport, your applicant's or your birth certificate, which has to be apostilled and translated, personal status documents. So if you were married, I was, in my application, I was divorced, so I had to provide my divorce documents as well, and anything that would prove name change documents. Like, so for instance, if you change your name when you got married, it's important to provide those marriage certificates so that you can see where those names are changed down the line. Then documents proving ancestors' Czechoslovak citizenship and birth on Slovak territory. This is where I think most people spend the majority of their time in all of these processes, trying to track down their ancestors' documents and prove that direct link. And that does take some time. You also have to provide, your FBI background check or background check, depending on any country you lived in, for greater than 180 days in the last 15 years. So if you've traveled a lot over the last 15 years and lived in a lot of different places, this could be a really difficult requirement for you. In that you may have to track down or go to various countries and get background checks done. And that can be costly. It can take up a lot of time. If you've only been a resident of the United States for the last 15 years or Canada, something like that, it's a pretty easy requirement to fill, assuming that you don't have a criminal record. So it just depends on your facts and circumstances as to how easy of a step that one is. You can include your SLA certificate if you have one. One benefit of including an SLA certificate in your CBD application is they are required to give you your residence permit. It's a pro forma, because as an SLA holder, they're obligated to give you a residency certificate. So there's less hesitation by the foreign police who review the residency documents and applications if you have an SLA certificate. So that's one advantage of it when you're applying for CBD if you have an SLA. As I mentioned before, anything that talks about name change documents also have to be apostilled and translated. So there's one last thing, a few other requirements here. You're required to provide tax, customs, municipality payment confirmation. So any sort of receipt of taxes, employment confirmation or an employment contract, health insurance payment confirmation, proof of income tax, social insurance, pension contributions, and a confirmation of studies or pension income. Now, all these can be done via an affidavit. And so my recommendation with this in particular, and I think I did this, the only thing I submitted a health insurance card. They didn't need any translation. I literally made a photocopy of my health insurance card, included that in my application process that checked the box there. The other items, I did an affidavit for, which a form of is given by, when you email the consulate in DC, the embassy in DC, in the consular office, when you go to make an appointment, you can ask them to send you a form of affidavit for this. They will send that to you. You can fill that out and sign it in front of them at your appointment, and that'll cover this. That's how most people handle this requirement. Just a note too that children under 14, so if you're thinking about having your child join you in your application, they can be included if they're under 14 in a parent's application. If they're between the ages of 14 and 18, you need to have a parent's consent as well. And they have to do a more fulsome application. So just a little glitch there. So I want to get into a little bit of the changes in the law that are coming up, and just how they're going to affect the process, because there's a lot of folks are concerned that that these changes are going to prevent them from applying, and I don't think that's going to be the case necessarily. I just think they're trying to make this, from my understanding of how this is going to work. The government's position is that they would like this to go a little smoother, and I think they're trying to take the interpretation of documents and interpretation of Czechoslovak citizenship. They're trying to take the interpretation of, as much as they can, away from the staff making those decisions. They're trying to make it a little bit clearer for applicants, because I think what's happened is a lot of applicants have just thrown a lot of documents at them, and are like, "Hey, here's all the documents I have. If you can figure out the link, great. But here's what I think the link is." But I'm not sure if it's 100% true. And so you'll see that what I've heard is they miss a document, they explain it. There's maybe a supplementary document that they send or explanation, and the interpretation, the staff gets past that hurdle. But that doesn't prove. But what the problem with that is that they're not getting consistent results in their applications. So I think this law is meant to try and make things as consistent as possible from their perspective. So there's pros and cons to this law. Let's go through. So it's expected to take effect in July 2026, pending Parliament approval. So we'll see what happens there. It's expected to pass without a problem, from what I gather. So if that happens, then in July 2026, the law will go into effect. And some of the proposed changes are these. First, they're going to eliminate the residency permit requirement for CBD applicants, and this is considered the most substantial change to the law, and it's a frustration for many applicants, because it's not really a substantive policy requirement. From what I understand, the glitch here is that the foreign police who review the residency applications, the issue is they were looking at the application as if they were looking at it for the first time without conversing with the Ministry of the Interior. So they were making their own independent evaluation of citizenship or of residency, versus the Ministry of Interior, who were making their own separate evaluation. And I've seen in a couple of cases now, I've seen where The residency application has been denied, but the underlying, this is what's strange, the underlying Ministry of the Interior CBD application was considered valid. But so now they had to redo the residency application, which caused delays. But again, they're trying to remove dueling reviews, essentially, of the same documents. A couple of benefits after this from this law. They're going to digitize interagency communications. So this is a huge, huge thing. Now, documents between the embassy and Bratislava will be able to be sent electronically. So this should hopefully speed the process up of getting documents to and from these agencies. It's also going to streamline post-naturalization steps. And so I'm not going to really get into this on this call necessarily, but once you are granted citizenship, there are a few additional steps to get your passport. And so they're going to try and streamline those and allow those steps to be done, particularly online if possible. So it's meant to sort of bring this up into the 21st century, this law, and use technology to hopefully expedite some of the documentation that's needed for some of these roles. Some of the rules, I'm sorry. What doesn't change, though, from this law? So the core eligibility requirements are remaining the same. Your ancestor has to be born in Slovak territory, held Czechoslovak citizenship. All the document requirements are expected to remain substantially the same. I included a link to the English-speaking Slovak Spectator newspaper where it discussed these upcoming changes as well recently. I think that article was authored by a law firm partner in Bratislava who's one of the firms that's been, advising the government on rewriting the laws. So that's very helpful. And so what does this mean now? What does this law actually mean? What does this change? Well, supposedly it's going to have an explicit verification mandate. So the Interior Ministry is now legally required to confirm that each application includes sufficient evidence of Czechoslovak citizenship. Now, what does that mean? I think there's going to be more guidance, I think, given out after this law goes into effect, after, people who practice and in this area, people who are submitting applications have a chance to see what the results are going to be from the Ministry of the Interior. But from what I gather in some of my conversations I've had, again, this is meant to make the interpretation process a little simpler on the Ministry of Interior side. So instead of again a stack of documents that maybe you may just throw there, they want maybe more specific documentation. I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like yet, as the law hasn't passed, but that's sort of where this is going. So what's some accepted evidence? So straightforward cases may rely on official records or archival documents that directly confirm or indicate citizenship status. This applies to all future applications. So every citizenship by descent application going forward will be reviewed under the standard after the law is passed. There supposedly will be a higher burden of proof, meaning that the evidentiary threshold is effectively raised and applied more consistently across all applicants. That's really what I think this goal is of this law. There's going to be less tolerance for gaps. So if there's errors, if there's incomplete documentation, insufficient evidence, these items in the past they were overlooked. There were many applications have gone through where they're like, oh no, I don't have that document, but I have this document, or there's just explanations alone may not suffice anymore. I think they're trying to be a little bit more rigid with this. Prior approvals are not precedent, so applications submitted on the assumption they'll be approved based on similar past cases are unlikely to meet the new standard. That's a disappointing point in my view. I think, precedent is very important, and I think cases that have gone through and have been proved, that those should be ones that we look at as example cases, not as ones that you can't rely on, but that's my viewpoint on that. again, thorough preparation is going to be critical. So prospective applicants should expect a more demanding documentation heavy process and prepare accordingly. That means I would say to have as much as possible have your ducks in a row, particularly um, with the uh, uh, with the evidence of Czechoslovak citizenship of your relatives, of your ancestry. That I think is going to be the most important steps here going forward. So I'm going to walk through just some examples, my example of where of how I prove my lineage, just so people can understand like how this works. And I'm going to show you the documents that I use to do that, just so everyone has a sense of a real life example. So my great grandmother, just to give everyone a little bit of background, my great grandmother was born in 1899. She was born in a village called Koromla, which is in very eastern part of Slovakia, about 2 miles from the Ukrainian border. We're talking east of Slovance, if people know where that is. So it's way out there. My great grandfather was born in a town about a few miles from there called Porubka, also far east of Sobradce. And he was born in 1885, and he emigrated to the United States in 1904. So my anchor relatives, my great grandfather and my great grandmother, one came to the United States in 1904, and one came to the United States in 1922. So under the laws, I could use either my great grandfather or my great grandmother for my SLA application, and I used up both. But I could only use my great grandmother because she emigrated in 1922 to the United States as my anchor relative for my Slovak citizenship. So what did I have to find? How did I prove this? How did I align my great grandmother and show that link from my great grandmother all the way to myself? So I had to first prove her citizenship. And so what was the easiest way to do that? So her birth certificate, her Rodney list, as everyone, if some folks on the call probably have them for their relatives, some may have their own. So this was my grandparents' birth certificate. It showed a birth in present day Slovak territory. Another way you can prove it is through a census sheet from 1920 or 1930 showing Czechoslovak nationality, and that's a Czechoslovak census. You can provide a Czechoslovak passport, a home certificate, or a citizenship certificate. And then, in order to get these documents, you would contact the Slovak National Archives or the state archives in the relevant region of Slovakia that your relative was from. The fee is about $30 US dollars, and the embassy and the consulate, depending on what state you live in, can help to request these documents. And I'll have links later in the resources section for these. So let's keep going. So you have to prove the uninterrupted family link, each generation connected by document. So I had to prove great grandparent to grandparent, grandparent to parent, and then parent to me. Each of them had to be apostilled and officially translated into Slovak. And the name changes all were documented with naturalization or marriage records. So, well, this one's it might be a little small here. I'm going to try and expand it for you a little bit, but this is my great grandmother's birth certificate. This was her Slovenská republika rodný list. So this shows that she was born in Koromla. Her name was Ilona Zahorčáková. Her father was Peter Zahorčák, and her mother was Hania Zahorčáková. And so now that gave me the name of my great grandparents, which was very neat for me to now be able to track those. And I plan on this summer. I'm going to spend a few days in those towns at the end of my trip, at the beginning of July, to go visit these towns and actually see if I have any relatives that are still in Koromla and Porubka, which is a neighboring town. So this is an example of what it looks like. Okay, now I'm going to show you some additional examples of documents. So one of the things I found, and I'm going to show you this. This was my apostille ship manifest for my great grandmother. So as you can see, I'm including in this document so everyone can see this, what an apostille actually looks like, just so you can see what it looks like. So as you can see, this is a certified copy of the National Archives and Records Administration. So that's who you would reach out to them to try and find your ship manifest and census records. And you'll see that. So what I did here was I circled in red the line, and you'll see this. This is my great grandmother. So she came over in 1922 on the SS La Savoie from Le Havre, France. And so she arrived in New York in 1922. And you'll see this is just the second page. So she was going to Bridgeport, Pennsylvania. Okay. So that's one document that I used. So that was the ship manifest proving that she came to the United States in 1922. Okay. The next document I want to talk about is the Declaration of Intent. This was also, I didn't include the apostille on this one, although I do have a copy of this somewhere. But this is also a certified copy from the National Archives and Records Administration. And this is a copy of the Declaration of Intention to naturalize as a U.S. citizen. Now, this provides some very interesting information for you. So, and I've circled this in red, and I find some of this kind of funny. First, race, Slovak, which I kind of find funny. So that's good evidence. So definitely Slovak. She considers herself Slovak. I was born in Koromla, Czechoslovakia, 1899. It talks about who her husband is, George Staver. That's my great grandfather. And then it talks about her children when they were born. And then I can see when I get down here, Mary, which is my grandmother, born April 20th, 1927. Who then went on to have my mother and then obviously me. So that was the line of ancestry. So it also talked about her name change. So she signs it as Helen Staver. That's her current name, her Americanized name. But her former name, Ilona Zahorchak, which is the name that she got, that was her name back in Slovakia and was changed obviously when she got married and when she came to the United States in 1922. So a critical document. What I then did too was to prove that that my family didn't leave the United States. And one of the things was it was advised that to include census records up to the date of my mother's birth. So my mother was born in 1950. So it was recommended that I include census records from 1930 and 1940 in order to prove that my family didn't leave the United States or collect other citizenship during that time. So I provided readings from the 1930 and 1940 census, and this shows that they were all living under the same roof in Pennsylvania. And same thing with the 1940. This one actually has the apostille, the copy. And again, you'll see it here, Pennsylvania. So, and then so there you go. And you'll see it was in Pennsylvania they were still in Pennsylvania in 1940. So my mom was born in 1950, so that didn't break any of the chain. And that got my ancestry in place for my CBD application. I want to show you two other documents here. One is, bear with me. This is the FBI background check. This is what one of them looks like. So this is one that I did back in 2024. Obviously, no criminal record. It's a one-page document. What's crazy is that this has to be translated and apostilled as well. I mean, I feel like this is a very form document that that the embassy would look at over and over again for American citizens who don't have a criminal record, but they still require it to be translated and apostilled. And then once you're admitted as a citizen, once you're sworn in, they actually issue you a Slovak birth certificate. And so for me, I was born in Falls Church, Virginia. And so my Slovak birth certificate now says, includes that information, which I kind of find a little funny to me that it's a Slovak birth certificate, but I'm actually born in the United States. So this is also an important document, obviously, going forward to have for any sort of documentation in Slovakia. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. I'm going to just cover those for you, and you'll have those are copies are in the presentation for you, so you can see if you want to see what an example looks like. So let's talk a little bit about apostille and translation requirements. So all official documents not issued in Slovakia must be legalized and officially translated. So if you have a Rodney list from Slovakia, it does not have to be translated. Passport from Slovakia does not have to be translated. Birth certificate from the United States needs to be translated, needs to be apostilled. Records from the archives, National Archives, has to be certified, apostilled. So it's a process to get these things done. It takes time. And again, federal documents have to be apostilled by the U.S. Department of State, and state records have to be apostilled by your state's Secretary of State. Official translation must be translated in Slovak by a certified translator registered with the Slovak Ministry of Justice. Currently, there's only 2 officially registered translators in the U.S. Again, though, that's a little bit of a glitch in this process. They really book up well in advance. You can also reach out to official translators in Slovakia. I've seen people do that online and reach out directly, and I would just make sure to get confirmation that they're okay, that they're certified to translate these documents and make sure that they're acceptable for your application. And also Czech documents are accepted without translation. So if you have Czech documents that are in Czech, you're okay with not getting translations. All official documents must be presented as originals or verified copies. I suggest personally that you bring originals and 2 complete sets of copies, just so that you have an additional set for yourself. That way, you just never know if things get lost or if they need an additional copy. It's just always good to have both a hard copy, and I also recommend keeping an electronic copy if you can. I think that would be very helpful, just in case something gets lost. So where do you submit your applications and how? So the Embassy of the Slovak Republic in DC is the place. You reach out to the embassy either by phone or by email. Email is probably the easiest, to be honest with you. They're pretty responsive. I think the phone sometimes is difficult. If you live in certain states, you're to apply at the embassy in DC. If you don't live in the states that are listed here, you're to go to the consulate in New York City. So if you're living obviously in the DMV area, it's the DC embassy. But particularly if you're living in like New England, for instance, like if you live in Massachusetts or Connecticut or someplace like that, New York City is going to be the place where you would do your applications. Appointments are required. No walk-ins are ever taken. So please contact the consular office as soon as you know when you'd like to get your application in or when you'd like to set your appointment. Again, I think it's a dance. It's sort of an art to find the right date of your date for your appointment, given the times when your documents will time out based on your apostilles and 6-month requirements. So I think the key is to try and get your documents in place and then I would say set your appointment, then go and get your apostille, and then obviously submit. That would be that's the order that I would recommend. But again, it's all, facts and circumstances specific based on your own individual like timing and ability to get to the embassy. So it's just something that you have to keep in mind and manage. Okay, processing timeline. Let's go through that real fast here. So the SLA office has up to 60 days to give their decision. I've seen delays. Mine one took 4.5 months, as I mentioned before. The residency permit, the Slovak Foreign Police have up to 90 days. And then the Citizenship Ministry of Interior has up to 24 months to make a final decision. I will give you, in my situation, when I applied for my citizenship by descent, it took about, strangely enough, it took only about 2.5 months to get it approved. I'm not sure if the reason why was that it was based on an SLA. That could have been the case. I don't really know why it was so fast, but it was, which was fantastic. Maybe it was also, I fit squarely within the law. So there weren't a lot of interpretation questions in my particular case. And then once you're granted citizenship and are sworn in and apply for your Slovak passport, it takes about 6 months from the submission of your passport to get it. It took me about 4 months, I guess, in the mail to get it back once I submitted it, just FYI. So that's 6 months is probably like an outside number. And then once your citizenship is granted, there is a few steps that you have to take. First, you have to take your oath of citizenship at the embassy. This is actually a lot of fun, actually. It's in Slovak, but don't worry. If you don't know Slovak or have a hard time with the pronunciations, the staff at the embassy is extraordinarily patient and will walk you through it. But it does have to be spoken in Slovak in order for it to count. Then you would apply for your citizenship certificate and register your birth and marriage if you're married on the Slovak registry. And then you could apply for your Slovak passport, and you can do all of that in one appointment if everything is prepared in advance. Some people, it's taken multiple steps to get their passport at the embassy. Some can do it in one step. It just depends on how the documentation works and the timing of it. So that's something after you get your citizenship to work through. Just also a note that the embassy or the consulate, they don't decide the applications themselves. All decisions are made by the SLA office, the Slovak Foreign Police, and the Ministry of the Interior back in Slovakia. So if you get denied, it's not the fault of the embassy or the consulate. It's all the decisions are made back in Slovakia. So just wanted to make everyone aware of that. And I'm going to go through some frequently asked questions. These are some things that people ask. I get questions about all the time. These are some of the more high level questions. Can you hold dual U.S. and Slovak citizenship? Yes, you can. The 2022 law relaxed dual citizenship rules. You don't have to renounce your citizenship. Again, fairly common bucket. My ancestor left before 1918. Do I qualify? The answer is possibly. Did they acquire ancestry after 1918? If yes, you may qualify. But again, documents. And of course, the final decision rests with the Ministry of Interior. One note I want to make about this is, unlike, Slovakia is one of many countries in Europe that has a citizenship by descent provision. The difference in Slovakia from many of the other countries that folks look at, and I'll just get an example, is like Czech Republic in particular. The laws are written a little bit different. And in Slovakia, there is a discretionary aspect to the law, meaning if you can prove all of this, if you can put the documents together, if you can show a line, your ancestry, we're Czechoslovak citizens, it's still up to them to say yes or no. There's no right to citizenship in Slovakia. It is a discretionary thing. And I think a lot of folks, when they hear that, they get worried. They think, oh, so if they just don't like me, will they just reject my application? The answer is most likely not, but the answer is that they could, and they could stop this at any point. They could say, well, I'm not going to, maybe we're not going to give it to Americans, or maybe we're not going to give it to Canadians. They could change that if they'd like to. So there's no requirement under the law to give it to you if you provide all the documentation. Whereas in other countries like Czech Republic, if you provide that link, if you show the that you're a direct descendant of a Czech citizen, they're required to give you the citizenship. It's not an option. It's a law. So some other countries have a little bit of a easier path, and I'm not sure why Slovakia allowed for discretion in this situation, but maybe it's that they wanted that. So it's just a point I wanted to make, that it is a slightly different law here in Slovakia. That you don't have citizenship by descent by right. It's at the discretion of Slovak authorities. So do you need to visit or live in Slovakia? The answer is no. No physical presence is required to receive or file citizenship for citizenship. Do you need to speak Slovak? No, you don't. Obviously, it's great if you do, but you don't have to at all. The 2022 law waives the language exam requirement for CBD applicants. What if my ancestor's name was Americanized? And that happened with my own relative. And I think this is where naturalization record, marriage certificates, documenting name changes should be included. So I'll give you one little thing with my own personal application. So my great grandparents were married in 1922 in Pennsylvania. My great grandmother came over, landed in early August. On August 22nd, was married to my great grandfather. So it was like 3 weeks later or something like that. But when I tried to get the marriage certificate itself, first of all, it wasn't, and this is what I found out, that a lot of folks who were married in the early 1900s in Pennsylvania in particular, they may not have, particularly if they were married at like a Slovak church, they may not have actually submitted that marriage certificate to the county or state authorities, to the state government to file. So when I tried to find my own great grandparents' marriage certificates, I couldn't find them anywhere. And I knew exactly where they were married. I knew the church, I knew everything. So eventually I just called the church, and I got on the phone with the priest, who was the head of the parish. And he said, sure, let me dig it up. And so he went down into the basement and he found the marriage certificate, and he was like, it's all beat up. So he created a new one for me, sent it to me. And then I sent it into the state to get apostille. Thought this would be great. If this is where my story would end, home run. Well, it got sent back by the apostille office saying that it wasn't a certified official document, meaning it wasn't created or certified in any way by any sort of state or government authority. And I was like, oh, okay, but the church isn't good enough. But it's not in the eyes of the apostille department in Pennsylvania. So the workaround that I had for that, since marriage certificate didn't really work and I couldn't use it in my application, death certificates I used. So I had to go and find my great grandparents' death certificates and they moved to New Jersey. So in New Jersey, which then provided, those name changes that I was looking for. So the combination of the naturalization record, that declaration of intent that I showed you before, along with the death certificates, provided my name change certifications for me. So it was clear that Ilona Zahorchakova was Helen Staver. So that's how it worked. So can I include my children? Yes. Children under 14 may be included in your parents' application. Children 14 to 18 require separate application with a clean criminal record and parental consent. Let's go over some common reasons for delays or rejections. These are things that I hear from folks. And in my role as Secretary General and Director of Recruiting for the Slovak Lacrosse Federation, I deal with players who are trying to get their paperwork in order, and some of these come up on occasion. Somebody might miss an apostille or an expired document. incorrect or unofficial translations, and sometimes the translators make mistakes, so it's always important to check that again. Sometimes there's unclear family links. So, for instance, if there's a missing birth or marriage certificate connecting generations, um, sometimes your ancestor's birth location is not clearly in present day Slovakia. Maybe it's on a border, maybe it's maybe it's on an edge of the country. Just it's questionable. Um, some people forget to include the permanent residence permit application. Now that won't be a problem if everything passes in July, but that's also a common mistake. Um, some tips for preparation. I would obviously start with your ancestors' birth record. It's the foundation. Contact the Slovak archives early because responses can take weeks to months. I would request FBI criminal records last. It expires quickly. Cross check all names, dates, places across all your documents. Keep digital scans of everything. I think preparing a family tree diagram is very helpful for staff to follow the lineage. Um, Here's a tip that was given to me about expediting the apostille process, and that's contacting your congressperson. Um, so in my situation, I contacted my congressperson, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton here in DC, to help me with expediting the apostille process for my FBI background checks because I know that that they have a limited expiration date, and they're frankly annoying to get done because you have to get fingerprints. It takes some time. Um, and I reached out to her on her website. There was a link in there to reach out. Somebody from her staff reached out to me the same day, made me fill out a form. Took all about 2 minutes. They said, great. I didn't hear back from them. And then a week later, I got my documents in the mail, apostille. So something that would take months and months to get back took me a week. Twice she did that for me. It seems like they're very helpful with these types of administrative headaches. So if possible, I would recommend going to your congressperson's website and take a look and see how to contact them and see if you can get them to help expedite the apostille process for you if timing is an issue. To me, this was one of the best tips I ever received in this process. It made my life made me feel much more at ease with timing because it wasn't such a oh, I'm just going to put this in the mail and pray that it comes back in a few months in time for my appointment. And I felt like I had a little bit more control over the process here. So that was a good tip that I received. I suggest bringing your originals in two complete sets of copies. You don't have to, but more is better just to have an additional copy. Obviously, label everything clearly. And again, always make an appointment in advance. There's not going to be any walk-ins that are going to be considered. So I wanted to provide one of the things with allowing folks to take this presentation afterwards to keep this for yourself as a reference tool is I wanted to provide good key resources for people to get their journey started. And so the first one is, excuse me, is to visit our website or email us about our Slovak genealogy discussion group. It's led by Georgine Chastain, former president, Slovak genealogist. It's a tremendous asset, tremendous resource. I strongly recommend looking into this and using this tool if possible. All sorts of questions come up out of this. So, and she's an excellent resource for us, and we're really lucky to have her. So I strongly recommend that. Again, you can reach out to our SLA committee if you're interested in SLA certificate and need a letter of support. If you're a member, we're more than happy to talk with you and guide you through that process. Here are some links to the Slovak Embassy in DC, phone number, emails. These are the links with the requirements specifically for Slovak living abroad or Slovak CBD. So those links are also live. The links to the Office for Slovaks Living Abroad, in case you want more details about how they look at it from a Slovak perspective. the Ministry of the Interior, just some more general information on apostilles, and then lists of official translators, both at the Ministry of Justice and here, the list that's provided by the embassy. Then what I wanted to do, and I think this is important for folks because this was this took me a little while to figure out. These are links to the pages for where to go to get your apostilles in some common states that many people use and have relatives, descendants who are Slovak. So at the federal level, there's the Department of State. So that's for your national archives, for your census records, for your FBI background checks. That's where you would go for those apostilles. There's the Pennsylvania apostilles. Obviously, Pennsylvania's huge. Ohio's pretty big. New York, New Jersey, and then I've included Maryland, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. These are also all the links where you would go. Once you have your document, you need to get it apostilled. These are the links you go to start that process. Typically, it's a send it in with a signed self-addressed stamped envelope. It'll come back. Pennsylvania for me, it was very fast. It took only a couple of weeks. New Jersey was also pretty quick. I haven't had to deal with New York. I've heard that can be a nightmare at times in terms of getting documents from New York. So I was fortunate not to have to deal with that. And Virginia was also very quick. My birth certificate was in Virginia, but everything else I had to deal with was in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So for me, I'm very familiar with those processes, not so much with some of the other states. But these are the links where you can go to get the apostille process started. What else? Some other additional websites for you. This is the National Archives site where you can start your research if you don't know. And frankly, when I started this back after the law passed in 2022, I went on ancestry.com and looked up my great grandmother, and they had most of the documents that I was looking for right there. And so once I had a copy of that, then I could printed those copies off or saved those copies and went and looked into the archives and dug into finding those exact documents, and it made it much easier. I think, doing it from scratch would probably be maybe a little bit more difficult, but it was easy having those documents in hand from ancestry.com. So it made my process a lot more easier. The next link is the FBI background checks. This is how you can go and get one. And again, that takes, you can go and do it. There's two ways to do it, or multiple ways to do it, but two of the easiest ways to do it are one at a post office or at a UPS facility. They have electronic ways to take your fingerprints now. There are private services that will come in to your house and do it, and they have a machine. It's a little bit more of a cost. And you can also go, you can still go to like your local police department and do a fingerprint card and have that sent in as well. So if you'd rather go that route, you can do that. And the timing for the FBI background check, once you submit it, if you do it electronically, you'll get your background check back that same day, which is fantastic, which is why we recommend that it's done last. Just in terms of timing, it's a fairly quick turnaround. And then again, I would strongly recommend joining the SASW genealogy group discussion on the fourth Tuesday of each month, and following Facebook and Reddit groups. They often provide valuable insights and analyze cases that are much more complicated and offer suggestions for how to navigate more difficult issues. There's a particular Facebook group that I've been following recently that's been fantastic. Every day there's new topics and new questions, and I would strongly recommend these groups. They're great resources for folks, and everyone is so welcoming and willing to share their knowledge. Because I think the neat part about this is that this is really a community. We're all a Slovak community. And we're all helping each other here, trying to get to this final goal of getting your SLA or citizenship. So we're all a resource. We can all help each other, and I strongly urge for that sort of sense of community in this process, because it's really needed. Because not everyone has all the answers for sure. Just wanted to make that point. And that's it for me. I just wanted to wish everyone good luck on their journey. I wanted to say thank you for joining this call. Again, we're going to have um, this will be disseminated to those on the call, so everyone will have a chance to keep this as part of their resources for their own journey. And the links are active. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you, and I'm happy to field some questions.
We have Georgine on the call. She would like to say something.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Georgine.
Hi.
Yes, I've been
Um,
sending these people the info email, so we get emails, we'll send them to you.
Okay, I just wanted to say that our genealogy group is, we mostly talk about finding the ancestor that you would use to get Slovak citizenship. And mostly what we talk about is genealogy in this country, in the United States, how you would do your genealogy to find that ancestor. We're not really part of the recommending how you can follow this process because Greg knows a lot more about it than I do. And also finding people in Europe, I could recommend somebody who could help you get documents in Slovakia, but I don't do any of that. So mainly what we talk about is Slovak genealogy in this country, how you would find census records, how you would find ship passenger lists, birth, where your ancestors were born, finding all those documents. So we're not, I can't say that. Greg makes it sound like we do a lot more than we really do, but we talk about genealogy a lot. So yeah, if you were interested in joining our group, we meet once a month on Zoom, and just send your email to that email list, info@DC Slovaks, and I'll send you the Zoom link and you can join us. So that's all I really have to say.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Georgine. Hey, Greg, Neil would like to correct a couple of things from your presentation. You want to do it now, Greg, or you want to send us an email? I mean, Neil.
I'm happy to do it now. I don't have time to answer more questions about this, but just very quickly.
Yeah, thank you for answering the chat questions.
Yes, no problem. So just so everybody knows, I am also a U.S. Slovak dual citizen. I have my passport, ID card. I've been to Bratislava. I executed the final steps of the process there. I applied in Washington, D.C. I know the folks at the consulate. I have a contact at the Ministry of the Interior as well. And so, Greg, great presentation. A lot of awesome, detailed information, but I did want to just correct a few things. So I posted a link in the chat comments to an explanation of the Hungarian 10-year rule. And
I tried
so,
copying what I could, so I'll give it to you, Greg.
yeah, but just very, very quickly, because it's a bit complicated. What it actually says is that if your anchor ancestor came after 1908, then they would have been presumed to continue their Hungarian citizenship for a period of 10 years. And if the creation of the Czechoslovak state in 1918 fell within that 10-year rule period, then your ancestor was considered to become a Czechoslovak citizen, and that would therefore qualify you. It's a lot more complicated than that if you want to read the explainer that I sent in the link. But your ancestor does not have to have come after 1918. They could have come after 1908. And then the new interpretation that the MOI is starting to implement as of December of last year actually even erases the 10-year Hungarian rule and moves the goalposts even further back with respect to who would have been considered or presumed to become a Czechoslovak citizen and qualify you. I also have a copy of that MOI interpretation. It's in Slovak, but it is out there and it's available for anybody to read. The next thing I just wanted to clarify is that this new amendment that's going to be voted on should pass and will be probably in effect by July 15th. All it really does is two things. One, it's removing the foreign police and the residency requirement from the process, which will be a blessing. The second thing it's going to do, it's going to allow the issuance of the certificate of citizenship to be done electronically or digitally, which should cut 2 to 3 months off everybody's process. That's it. There are no other changes. And so the documentation requirements for citizenship by descent are not changing as a result of this amendment, not in any way, shape, or form. That's a narrative that's being pushed by several law firms in Slovakia who now are facing the prospect that applying will be easier for people and therefore may not need the services of a law firm, and they are trying to protect their interests by pushing this narrative that the documentation requirements are going to get stricter. That's false. I can tell you that unequivocally. The next thing is, so there's no higher burden of proof. Also, Greg, you mentioned 1920 or 1930 Czechoslovak census. If you can find an ancestor on that census, that would prove Czechoslovak citizenship. Just want to point out there was no 1920 Czechoslovak census. That was the first Czechoslovak census that was ever taken was in 1930. So you would need at least a 1930 Czechoslovak census. Also, Greg pointed out that he included some U.S. Census documents to prove that your ancestors didn't leave the United States. That is not necessary, nor is that required. Also, Greg mentioned that any document that is not a Slovak document and or a Czech document needs an apostille. That is not entirely true. Any U.S. document, any non-EU document requires an apostille. But if you are submitting a document that was generated by another EU country, that document does not require an apostille. So the two translators in the United States, and forgive me for saying this, but they are really not recommended to be used, particularly the one in California. She makes a lot of mistakes. And I have spoken with the Ministry of the Interior about this directly, and they do not recommend using.
I was just reading that on Facebook the other day.
Yeah, they do not recommend using the two U.S. translators. It just makes their job much more difficult. There are a number of certified translators over in Slovakia, which are recommended, are excellent, don't make mistakes, work very quickly, documents back and forth by DHL, and they are cheaper. They are less expensive than the two translators in the United States because what a Slovak-based official translator can charge is regulated by the government, but that's not so if they're living in the United States. Also about the two copies and the originals when you apply. Between now and July 15th, the two copies of all the original documents is not suggested. They are required. And the reason why they are required is because one set of copies goes to the foreign police. The other set of copies goes to the Ministry of the Interior. They go simultaneously through the diplomatic mail. The originals then are returned to you at your application appointment, except for the FBI background check, which they will keep the original of. So you keep the originals. What they actually do at the appointment is they compare the originals to your 2 copies. And then if they're satisfied that the copy reflects exactly the originals, then they actually certify the copies, the 2 copies that are sent over to Slovakia, to the foreign police and to the Ministry of the Interior. After July 15th, you won't need 2 copies anymore. You will only need 1 copy for the Ministry of the Interior. And then that will be certified from the originals at your application appointment. But those copies are required, not optional. The only document and apostille that expires in 6 months is the FBI background check. None of the other documents or apostilles expire in 6 months. And the last thing I just wanted to clarify is that you cannot complete this process in 1 visit, either to the embassy in Washington, D.C. or the consulate in New York. The process in D.C. requires 3 visits. The process in New York requires 2 visits. So the reason why the process in D.C. requires 3 visits is 1 visit you have to apply. Then, after you're approved and your listina, the granting of citizenship, is returned to Washington, D.C., you then have to come for a 2nd visit and take the oath. And at the oath appointment, you submit your application for your citizenship certificate. Then that goes by diplomatic mail back over to Slovakia, takes a month. Then there's a month to process it and a month to come back. So in roughly 3 months, the citizenship certificate will be returned. You'll get an email from the embassy. They will then ask you to submit your birth certificate application and your birth certificate application by mail. Then they will return your birth certificate application along with a certified copy of your citizenship certificate back to Bratislava. The special registry in Bratislava will process your birth certificate. It'll take a month or 2, and then a month back. And then once your birth certificate, your Rodney list, arrives back at the embassy, you then make an appointment to go back to Washington, D.C. to have your biometrics taken for your passport. And if you want a national ID card, you can apply for it at that time as well, at the same time as your passport. Now, New York does it a little bit differently, saves 1 visit, because they will allow you to have your biometrics captured when you go for your oath appointment. And then they will just hold those in abeyance until your birth certificate comes, and then they will submit your biometrics and your passport application. So it saves 1 step. But even though that's good news, if you're applying in New York, the bad news is getting an appointment in New York to apply is next to impossible right now. Appointments in Washington, D.C., if you were to request today, would probably be in November or December of this year. If you are in the New York State and you're trying to get an application appointment now, it'll probably be in second half of 2027. But all of that said, you can also go to Slovakia and apply. You can apply in Bratislava, you can apply in Prešov, in Košice, many places in Slovakia, but that's just a whole nother kettle of fish and process. But there are consultants over there that can arrange that for you. There are lawyers over there who can arrange that for you. But if you don't want to wait for an appointment here in the States, you can certainly go over to Slovakia and apply. So anyway, I'm sorry for rifling through all that, but I just wanted to make sure that some of the things that were said maybe just needed a little bit finer point on them. But that's a great presentation.
One quick question. Do you have a list of translators in Slovakia?
So there are some actually on the embassy website, the Washington, D.C. Slovak Embassy website.
That was the question somebody asked.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the Facebook group and the Reddit group have plenty to recommend.
And then Patricia has her hand raised.
Yes, just a quick question. Greg, when you were talking about naturalization in the US. I may have missed it, but I thought that you did not mention the actual certificate of naturalization. You talked about getting the petition for it, you know, the declaration. Well, so what about the actual certificate of naturalization here in the US?
Yeah, in my situation, I just included the declaration of intent to naturalize. That provided, which was done in 1929. So that was, I guess, yeah, several years before she became a citizen. But it provided, it was just another document to provide the link. It had information on that document that had she was Slovak, where she was born. It just was more of a chain to show more linkage and name changes for me. So I don't think you need to provide the naturalization certificate itself. I just provided that because it just was a good informational thing to provide. So
Okay, okay. Well, that would be an interesting thing to check because my understanding was that the actual naturalization certificate would be an important document to include. But
Um, can I comment on that?
please, Neil.
Yeah. Okay. Are you referring to U.S. naturalization documents?
Mhm.
Yes. Okay. So basically, with the naturalization documents, there's a complete set, if you will. Actually consists of 3 documents, right? There's an intent, there is a declaration, and then there's the actual like
Mhm.
oath taking. So there's 3 documents. The value of those documents are in proving that your ancestor was at one time or any time a Czechoslovak citizen, right? So if the naturalization occurred after 1918, and on any of those 3 documents, they are shown renouncing Czechoslovak citizenship, right? Because on all 3 of those documents, there's a line where they fill in what nationality you are renouncing to become a U.S. citizen. So if that says CSL, Czechoslovak, Czechoslovak Republic, Austria-Hungary, but specifically Czechoslovakia, I've seen all different, iterations of this, then that qualifies as proof that your ancestor was a Czechoslovak citizen. And then from a proof perspective for that requirement, those naturalization documents are all that's needed.
Wow. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Greg, as well.
Hi, I have a question as well.
Yes.
What were the 3 different documents? There was the intent, the oath, and one other
Declaration.
declaration. So if so
Can
for-
I add that it's a declaration of intent, then there's a petition for naturalization,
Yes.
and then there's the actual naturalization certificate, which you probably would not find unless it's in your family papers. You would only be able to obtain from like the National Archives the first 2 documents. And sometimes it's a little hard to get them, to figure out which court has those documents, the declaration of intent and the petition for naturalization. So that we talk about that a little bit in our genealogy group, because it depends when your ancestor applied for naturalization to become a U.S. citizen. And it's different in every state. So it's a little complicated.
That's correct.
but is this if we have one of these documents that states that our relative was a Czech citizen, this qualifies to prove the nationality part?
If you
Is
have
that
a
your answer?
document, it's probably the naturalization certificate. And I'm not sure that would say that they were a Czechoslovak citizen. I'd have to look at one of those.
Mhm.
It's
But
probably the other 2 that you'd want to look for, the declaration of intent or the petition for naturalization.
But if it's stated that our relative was Czechoslovakian? Does that suffice to satisfy the
Oh, I
nationality
don't know. I'll
requirement?
turn that over to Neil or
Yeah,
Greg.
no, it should. And what Georgina is referring to with respect to these documents, she's absolutely correct in that there was a point of demarcation where naturalizations occurred in a county courthouse versus in a U.S. district court. And so those that were naturalized in U.S. district court have a naturalization certificate. Those that were naturalized in a county court never received a naturalization certificate, but rather there was like an oath certificate that you took the oath. So that's the little bit of a difference.
And what if another thing? What if our relative never naturalized to be a U.S. citizen? So would that infer that he was Slovak upon his death? And would that satisfy the requirement?
If you could prove that,
Yeah.
that's kind of a proving that they didn't naturalize. That would be a little bit harder.
Well, for example, reaching out to the USCIS and getting a certificate from them affirming that this person never naturalized as a U.S. citizen, inferring that he would be Slovak.
Well, you could try that.
Yeah, I mean, you can obtain a certificate of non-naturalization. People have done that. But this is just really a complicated individual case metric.
Which would be stronger evidence between never naturalizing as U.S. citizen or having mentioned that he was a Slovak or Czechoslovak on the U.S. naturalization petition?
I'm not sure how to answer that, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
What you have to focus on, and Greg explained this, I thought very, very well in his presentation, are the two main requirements, right? That your anchor ancestor, parent, grandparent, great parent was born within the current day borders of Slovakia. That's proven by a birth certificate. And then two, that they were at one time or any time a Czechoslovak citizen. And there are a number of ways to prove that. So if they left after 1930 and you can find that ancestor on the 1930 Czechoslovak census, that's proof. Sometimes they will accept if your anchor ancestor's parents, so let's say your anchor ancestor is a grandparent, the great-grandparents never left, never emigrated, and are found on the 1930 census. And because citizenship in Slovakia is conferred by blood, not by birth, that is an inference that the child would have been a Czechoslovak citizen upon birth. So sometimes a ship's manifest will do it. So if on the ship's manifest it's showing that their nationality was Czechoslovak, that can work as proof. A naturalization document, if it shows, that can be proof. So there's really no one document that proves it. Sometimes it's different documents, or other times it can be a preponderance of evidence where you have two or three documents which in concert with each other together prove the point that there was Czechoslovak citizenship.
Okay. And I have one other question. Do people who were adopted qualify as well for it?
This is a very complicated thing. And I would just really suggest engaging an attorney about that.
May I ask a question? May I ask a question?
Yeah,
My
sure.
name's Ava.
Yeah.
Thank you. My name's Ava Plakins. My mother, grandparents, entire maternal family were Czechoslovak citizens born in what is now Slovakia. I have my mother's and grandfather's birth certificates and also their citizenship certificates. My question is about the age of these documents. One is 1947. Oh, they were all originally issued. They have original stamps on them, but they were issued in 1947 and 1929. But they're as good as gold. They're Czechoslovak original documents with original stamps and what we call stempels at home. So everything is cool about them. Are they too old? Do I have to go to Bratislava or elsewhere and get new certified birth certificates from Slovakia itself?
I can answer that if I don't know, or Greg, but the answer is yes. You would need to get modern day birth certificates, Rodney list from Slovakia. It's not hard and it's not complicated. So since you have the original birth certificates already, you know exactly where they were born, you know where those birth certificates were issued. So
Yes.
what you would need to then do is just contact the appropriate state archive
Okay.
that covers the place of birth.
Okay.
And then what they will do is they will create what's known as a certified extract of the birth record.
Yes.
And then they'll send that to the local registry, and the local registry will print out the modern day Rodney list. The cost for that is just €7. The issue is then how do you get it back, so that you have it to apply. They will not mail a Rodney list outside of Slovakia. So they're not going to send that to you in the United States. You would need to have somebody in Slovakia they could send it to, who can then send it to you. If you don't want to do that, then you can hire a consultant, a genealogist, or a law firm in Slovakia who will do it for you for a fee. Or you can request it through the embassy in Washington. So
Or
you
find a
can,
friend.
yeah. So you can send those copies of the original birth certificates that you have to the embassy in Washington and request the modern day Rodney lists, and they will acquire them for you, and they will come back eventually to the embassy in DC, and you can pick them up.
With my originals?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good to know. I have one other quick question. My entire family wants to apply for Slovak citizenship. We're all over the United States. Some of us fall under the embassy jurisdiction in DC, and some of us the consulate in New York. Given the length of the process, what do we do?
Okay, so this is a bit of a sticky wicket right now. Last year, they were allowing multiple members of the same family applying together to all either go to New York or all go together to DC, regardless of the state. That has changed now. And the reason why it's changed is because they're both just overloaded,
Yeah.
with appointments. So New York is actually now restricting family applications together to 2 or 3 people. If you have more than that, then they're splitting them over 2 appointments. Both New York and Washington now are saying that you have to split up. And those who live in a state that's covered by the DC Embassy apply in DC from your family. And those who are in a New York jurisdiction state have to go apply in New York. Now, it gets a little tricky because you have only one set of original documents and they're going to be needed at both appointments, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
they have to be somehow coordinated or scheduled in a way where one's, sort of group of family members using the original documents is applying either in DC or New York, and then has to pass those documents to the other family members who are then going to apply in the other place, either DC or New York.
Thank you. Now we have a couple of hands raised.
Thank
Let's
you.
answer those. And then I think we can go for hours on these questions. We might have
Yeah.
to get an informational meeting just for questions. I think next was Madonna and then Tom.
Mine is pretty quick. If my grandfather immigrated through Baltimore in 1899, how does that play? Because you've been talking about 1920 and prior to 1920. So Do I have to go to great-grandfather at that point?
I'm sorry, can you ask that again?
Everyone has been talking about 1920, immigrating to this or naturalized after 1920. My grandfather came here in 1899.
Yeah, okay. So ordinarily, before this new interpretation by the Ministry of the Interior from December, you would qualify only for SLA. That would have been way too early, even with the 10-year Hungarian 10-year rule. But with this new interpretation, that's opening the possibility that you might qualify. So I have it on pretty good authority that they will accept a 1920 or 30 or 40 US census as proof of Czechoslovak citizenship under this new interpretation, as long as that census indicates their nationality or was Czechoslovak or Slovak. Now, here's the big disclaimer. Similar to Greg's legal disclaimer at the beginning of his presentation. This has been talked about, written about, debated, discussed ad nauseum. Many have applied to this point based on this new interpretation. As of yet, to my knowledge, or anyone else's knowledge, there is no evidence of anyone that has been approved based on this new interpretation. People are applying by the hundreds, if not thousands, but I'm not aware of anyone who has been approved with that yet.
Did you say the 1920 or 1930 census listing the Czechoslovakian citizenship?
U.S. Census, 20, 30, 40. So the
it might
reason,
have said Hungary, it might say the Hungarian kingdom.
right,
depending upon whoever the census taker was at the time and understanding their lack of speaking English. So then in that case, you would have to go to the great-grandfather, right?
well, you would have to go to whoever was identified as a Czechoslovak citizen. So the reason why
Okay, got it.
Under this new interpretation, a 1920, 30, 40, 50, 60 census would work is because under this new guideline interpretation, your anchor ancestor would have to have been alive in December of 1918 when the Czechoslovak Republic came into being. And so the only way you can prove that they were alive, not the only way, I'm sorry, a way to prove that they were alive in 1918 is if they appear on a 1920 census or 1930 census or 40 or 50 or 60, right? That proves that they were alive. It's possible you could also use a death certificate from after 1918, but my understanding from the MOI is they prefer the census over a death certificate.
I actually contacted the consulate in DC and I sent them a copy of my ancestor's naturalization record. And he filed the intent in 1909, and I sent them a copy of the 1930 census, which is the only one that mentions Czechoslovakia. And they seemed okay with it and made me an appointment. I was kind of like, is this going to be enough? And so we'll see.
Yeah, well, that's it. So yes, they're taking appointments and they are taking applications based on the new interpretation. And many are doing it. And I have people that I'm helping that are doing it. But as I said, sort of under the your mileage may vary, heading, there's no proof of anybody being approved yet. It may come tomorrow. Somebody will pop up in Facebook or on Reddit or someplace and say,
on Facebook.
I was approved.
There was somebody on Facebook that said that they were approved. So then I made the appointment. So I'll see what happens. My appointment's in September.
Oh, okay. Tom?
Yeah, my question was what to expect at the embassy. I received email that my citizenship certificate has arrived from and I have an appointment on June 5th to apply for the passport. And I want to make sure that I only make one visit there. Do I
I'm sorry.
expect-
I'm sorry, you said your citizenship certificate has come in?
Yes.
Okay, but not your birth certificate.
I was born in Slovakia. I have supplied all the documents. So they just verify that I'm a Slovak citizenship. Now I want passport.
He wants the passport, so he wants to make one visit with the
Make sure
passport.
I don't forget anything. There's something about taking pictures and
Yeah,
prints.
right. So you're in a little bit of a different case or circumstance because of your birth. So yes, so you'll go to Washington, D.C., you'll make an appointment to apply for your passport. And all your biometrics are collected at the appointment. So there's like physically a little booth with a camera
I get it.
and a fingerprint scanner. And so they will take your picture and they will take your fingerprints, your index fingers, and submit your application over to Slovakia. And then your passport should be back in 6 to 8 weeks.
Is there a actual certificate of the citizenship that I get?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So they're holding it and I can pick it up at the same time. Cool.
Correct.
All right. That's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, and also, by the way, you can apply at the same time as your passport for a Slovak national ID card. Looks like this.
Občiansky preukaz.
Yes.
So I have a generic question. Why is Slovakia doing this? Is there some money behind all this? And what's the benefit of having a Slovak passport in second place? If I travel.
What's the benefit of having a Slovak passport?
For travel,
Oh, well, first
People
of all,
ask me, why are you getting a Slovak passport? And that's well, that's a good question.
I can give you two
I
main
feel
benefits.
homesick.
I can
That's
give
why.
you two main benefits right off the bat. One, when you travel to an EU country, you don't have to stand in the all other passport line, which can take 2 or 3 hours to get through.
Yep.
You can just breeze right through the EU line and gate in less than 5 minutes. So that's one obvious. But the other is having a Slovak passport also means you have an EU passport. And having an EU passport allows you to live, work, buy property, travel freely in any of the 27 EU countries, plus 4 more Schengen countries and Switzerland, as if you are a citizen. It is the 5th most powerful passport in the world. It's an incredibly valuable asset to have.
Why is Slovakia doing this at all? What are they getting out of this? I mean, somebody's getting something out of this, right?
Spoken like a true Slovak there. Very cynical.
Exactly.
I like that. The next thing you can do is give me your resting Slovak face. That's always funny. But no, this is just my opinion and what I've heard and, from talking to people that were involved in helping to get this law implemented in 2022. So Parviz Malakuti, who's an immigration attorney in California, Samuel Durovich, who's over in Slovakia, the Falith people. There were a lot of people involved in this 2022 lobbying, if you will, for the law. And I think the intent behind it was to not only reconnect the diaspora living not just in the United States, but all over the world, in South America, in Australia, in the UK. There are, Slovak, descendants everywhere. But I think that the idea behind it is to try to attract people to come back to Slovakia to buy property, to start businesses. Americans are, let's just put it this way, more entrepreneurial than your typical Slovak. Create jobs, invest in the country, bring wealth, bring resources by granting citizenship.
Yep. Okay.
It helps the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. Like I can apply for Slavic citizenship for my great grandfather, hopefully. But like my daughter, she's already in medical school over in Hungary, so she can only get Hungarian citizenship from this. And so I'm spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in Hungary. So I mean, it just brings in money. It brings in a lot of money. So if I get this citizenship, I'm probably going to buy a house in Slovakia so I can go bug my daughter. That's the whole point here.
Yeah,
So I think it just brings in money. I'm not taking any money out, and I'm probably going to put a lot of money in.
Yep.
Yeah. And by the way, I just want to clarify one more thing, because it did come up in some of the discussion, I think, and in Greg's presentation, and this is an often debated and confused point that I think I can just bring some clarity to. So any under 14 child or minor that is included, is allowed to be included on the parent's application, there is no generational limit for that under 14 child. If they are over 14, then the parent, grandparent, great-grandparent, three-generation rule applies. But if they are under 14 and the anchor ancestor would be their great-great-grandparent, it does not matter. They will still be granted citizenship as long as the parent is granted citizenship. And I had this exact situation because when I applied 1 year ago now, in April of 2025, I applied with my 2 adult daughters, and my older daughter had a 1-year-old, now 2.5-year-old, my grandson. And we were applying based on my grandfather, who emigrated in 1921. This would be my daughter's great-grandparent and my grandson's great-great-grandparent. So my grandson was included as an under 14 on my daughter's application, and he was approved. He is a citizen. So there's no generational limit on an under 14 minor included on the parent's application. If they are 1 day over 14 years old, they need their own application. And if they are over 3 generations, they don't qualify. They have to apply for SLA.
Quick follow-up to that. What about spouses? So my nephew would be, his great-grandfather would have been a Czechoslovak citizen when he emigrated in 1918. He has 3 children under 14. He is interested in getting a CBD. But what about his wife? How does that work?
So his wife cannot get citizenship. So this is just strictly all by blood, jus sanguinis, as they say in Latin. A spouse just doesn't qualify. Now,
okay, so they'd have to go through a different process.
Right. So the only way a spouse is going to obtain citizenship is if after the applicant that's granted citizenship actually moves to Slovakia, then the spouse will receive a 5-year residency permit based upon EU family unification law. So they'll be issued a 5-year residency. And then if they stay in the country, Greg, you may know this better than me. I don't know why this is slipping my mind, but is Slovak citizenship require 5 years permanent residency or 10? Do you know?
I think it's 5 years.
I think it is 5, because some countries are 10, some countries are 5. So basically, what will happen is if you move to Slovakia, your spouse gets 5-year residency, and then at the end of 5 years residency, they could then apply for citizenship.
Makes sense.
Thank you so much. That's very helpful.
All right. I think that's it. Greg, anything else? Neil, anything else? Or we can go for hours.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hijack Greg's presentation.
No, Neil, I think
in any way, shape, or form.
It was fantastic to get.
Oh, Greg will take
your
any
views on
help
it.
from you, Neil, looks like.
No, I appreciate that. No, it's great to have somebody else who, because again, like I said before, this is a community. I think we're all figuring this out as we go through it.
Yeah.
And there's a
And
lot of
just one other tidbit. You
Ooh.
can not only get one passport, but you can get two. So when I went over to Bratislava in December to apply for my passport and ID card and receive it, what I learned is that the main passport is a 10-year passport. Just like in the US, it's good for 10 years. But then at the same time, you can also apply for a backup passport, if you will, which is good for 5 years. And so you have to reapply for the backup every 5 years, the main one every 10 years. And people ask me all the time, well, why would you need two passports? What's the point of that? The only reason for having the second 5-year passport is if you're traveling to Europe and you're taking your 10-year passport, you would leave your 5-year passport with a friend or a family member here in the US. And if your main passport during your trip is lost or stolen, then your person here in the US holding onto your 5-year passport can FedEx it to you, and you still have a passport to be able to continue your trip, and then reapply for your 10-year passport, whenever
That makes
you
sense because I keep copies to
like.
my husband when I go over.
Yeah, and then the second reason to have it, which is a pretty obscure reason, really, but if you want to travel to a country that the U.S. would consider to be a controversial country, Russia, Cuba, Iran, someplace like that, and you were applying for global entry, let's say, here in the US, and they ask you the question, do you have a second passport? You say yes, and they say, okay, can I see it? They open up your Slovak passport, they see a stamp from Russia, or they see a stamp from Cuba or from Iran. Trust me, you're in for about a 2-hour inquisition, right? So if you're traveling to a country like that, you would use your 5-year backup secondary passport so that the stamp from that country is not in your main passport.
Good to know.
So anyway, just a little tidbit.
Well, Martha's asking, was it easier to go to Slovakia to get your passport than here in the US?
Well, it's faster. I will tell you that. But
go on vacation and get your passport, right?
Yeah, but it requires legal help. I hired a lawyer over there to help me do it. So yeah, I mean, basically, you're looking at a process here in the US from the time you apply to the time you have a passport in your hand of 7 to 9 months. I was way too impatient for that, and that's why I went over to Slovakia to do it. And I had all these documents in my hands in 4 days.
Awesome. Thanks, Neil. Greg, anything else?
So we'll get copies of the presentation.
Yes, Tom. I even tried saving the chat so we can include the chat if it worked. So
Good.
and everybody, good luck on your endeavors and journey.
All right, thanks a lot. I'm out of here. Do widzenia, majte sa.
Do widzenia, Tom.
yeah.
I'm sure a couple of us speak Slovak here.
Any other questions from anybody that anybody can answer?
Hi. I know I didn't raise my hand because I can't find the button. My name's Patty.
Oh, it's okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You might see a
I
dog.
see a dog in the
down.
snow or something.
It's a dog looking through the clouds from
clouds. Okay. Yeah.
So I've had like 17 dogs, so it just works really well. My grandmother, which I thought was going to be my anchor person, all she had ever talked about was Czechoslovakia. She immigrated here in 1910. on every census, it says Czechoslovakia, Czechoslovakia. A couple of them say Austria or Hungary. Marriage certificate might say Austria. And I'm getting her naturalization papers. I have her alien card. I have her petition, which was done in Indiana, and yada, 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 yada. Would the 1930 census saying that she was from Czechoslovakia and all of that documentation prove that she was from Czechoslovakia?
So just going back over all of those
Because
documents.
right now I'm fighting with trying to find her baptismal records, because it's Litmanova, and she was born January 18th, 1980 or 1892, and trying to find baptismal records sucks. Sorry, pardon me, but it freaking sucks. And I'm trying to do family search, and I'm trying to actually, I've done pretty good in 2 months' time. So I have tracked down more freaking stuff. I'm a retired pediatric nurse, which means when you sick me on something, I'm like a dog on a bone. So,
well, let me just say one quick thing about that. So, over in Slovakia, there are two kinds of archives. There are regional archives and there are state archives. There is a point of demarcation with respect to where records are kept and can be found. And the point of demarcation is 1895. So any records from before 1895 would be found, let me just think this through, 1895, would be found in a state archive. Any record after 1895, so say a birth in 1896, would be at a regional archive or a municipal archive. Okay, so if this anchor ancestor you're referring to, you said was born in 1892?
Correct, my grandmother.
So that would be found at a state archive. So you have to look at the town where your the grandmother was born.
Is Litmanova a town? See, I don't even know if Litmanova on everything, her marriage certificate, everything says Litmanova, Litmanova, Litmanova. I don't even know if it's a freaking town. When certain things come up, it says Litmanova Pressov.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Litmanova is above Stara Ljubovnia, so I don't know. It's right by Poland, right by the Poland border.
Because I'm going in September, and it's literally, I want to see where she was born. And I was literally trying to get everything together and hand carry them over in September. Although that's probably not going to happen, but
I'm sorry, everybody. I have to go.
I'm sorry.
So I'm leaving the meeting now, but it was great seeing everybody.
Is there a way to get in touch with you?
I'm sorry?
Is there a way to get in touch with you?
I'll connect with Marta about that.
Okay.
That would be great.
Thank you, Neil.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye, Neil.
Sorry, Marta, and I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I know a lot of people. I think we need to get a couple of these meetings on, Greg, just for questions and that Q&As.
It's because that is where I am stuck right now.
Yeah.
Is I have her siblings. I have their ship manifest, but I cannot find hers. But I do have her naturalization. I have her alienation number, her alien number, registration number, her naturalization number, her petition for it, and actually even her oath, which I have all those numbers, archives, and I am just waiting for them. I'm trying to figure out how to order them.
Mhm.
That's where I am. I'm trying to figure out how to order them.
Yeah.
So I do know her folk. I mean, I know her parents' names,
Mhm.
but the thing is that I don't. I'm trying to find
Yeah,
a
you might have
baptismal
to.
record.
Yeah, I might have to find somebody around Litmanova, like the okres. What's that in English? Somebody who can help you find it.
And God, you sound. If I close my eyes, your accent is me listening to my grandmother.
Well,
My-
I am from Slovakia, but I'm Hungarian too.
If,
So
well, I'm Eastern European. I'm gonna die when I'm like 1950, or in 150 years. They,
good.
I'm serious. It's like
Yeah,
Eastern Europeans live forever. I'm
I sure hope so. We need to live forever, exactly.
So, is Marta, will you have your name somewhere also where I could reach out to you?
Well, you can also send an email to the info@dcslovaks.org. Me, Greg, everybody will get that email.
Oh, okay.
So if you send that email to that email, me and Greg will get those emails.
I missed the first like 7 minutes, so
Okay, we'll send out the recording. So
oh, God bless your sweet soul.
and we'll
I'm
send the
sorry.
recording and Greg's presentation.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so very much. And like I said, I'm sorry I didn't put my hand up.
It's okay, no problem, Patty. Thank you.
And slap down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.